It's almost like real confidence and false confidence. And not like as if one person's better or not. It's just like you said to Alex Honnold, he repeated this about 1,000,000 times.
He didn't just go walk up to El Cap one day and decide he's going to solo it. That was years and years and years of practice. Like, I guarantee you, he knew every single foothold and every single handhold on that 3,000 feet of rock. So it seems crazy that he did something like that, but it's not at all crazy when you're inside the head and mentality he had for it.
Welcome to the Movement and Performance Podcast, where it is my goal to help people get active, connect with their body, and perform better. Today I have with me Russ Clune, one of the most influential figures in modern American climbing. He's well known for helping to establish the Gunks in New York as a world-class climbing destination. In this episode, we'll explore risk, confidence, and how to live a lifelong active lifestyle. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Most of my listeners, I have a wide range of listeners that tune in for different reasons. Some are going to be very interested in climbing itself, and some might be excited to climb and haven't climbed yet. So hopefully the episode inspires them a bit, and then some will just, are interested in performing well, whether themselves or just learning things like courage, fear, risk-taking. You said about friendships, little gems about how to be a lifelong mover. Like you said you're 66 years old, and you've been doing this since, when did you start?
77, so it's 48 years so far.
48 years.
Yeah.
So, one of the big things I try to do is inspire people to get active and be active for life. So that was a big thing that stood out when I saw you, was the, that you're a little bit older and still, participating.
I'm ancient, dude.
Yeah, you try to say like, but not, 60, nowadays age, I feel like, we're pushing the boundaries a bit where like people can still do stuff in their 60s and still.
I'd agree with, the reality is if you've ever done anything athletic or pretty much probably any endeavor, you hit a prime time in your life, and then inevitably you're on the wrong side of the bell curve. Right. So, and I never ever kid myself about where I actually sit in terms of the world of climbing. One time I could measure myself against the best climbers in the world and see where I sat, and I was pretty happy with it. And now I just, it's a fool's errand to go there. So I think the point is, if you're lucky enough to find a passion with an endeavor, be it climbing or playing golf or running or whatever it is, then and you love it, then you just keep on doing it and you stop worrying about the actual times or results per se. It's about the activity, right?
Yeah. It's funny, I was going to talk about this a little later, but it naturally just came up now. There was a piece, I think it was in your book or somewhere that I read, where it said something like, in the beginning you climb for like, for the route, and then it was like you climb for the travel or like location, and then you travel for friends. Or am I getting it right?
No,
or can you tell it to me?
That really wasn't even how I looked at it. But when I wrote my book, I had, I wanted feedback and blurbs from people, and I sent a copy of it to Alex Honnold. And people might know Alex Honnold from the movie Free Solo.
For sure.
The guy who free soloed El Cap. And that was Alex's take on it when he read it. Was like how I was searching out hard routes, and then how eventually it came to be about friendships. And it is about that. I think that's a very natural arc. When I think about when I started climbing, I wanted to climb as hard as I possibly could. I wanted to do the hardest rock routes I could possibly climb. And I didn't really give a shit about who I was climbing with per se. It could be anybody who was good enough to hold a rope and belay me.
Right.
And even back then, that was less of an issue, because anybody you ran into at the crags during in the 70s and 80s and even in the early 90s, you assumed, and you rightfully so, that they knew what they were doing. I'd be a little more hesitant to just imagine anybody I'd pick up at the crag would actually have good belaying skills.
Right.
But it was about that. And also, I just had a wanderlust for traveling, because I started climbing here in the Gunks. I was in school in Vermont, but this is where I first went to for a major crag. And after climbing here and meeting other visiting climbers, I just realized there were so many places to go. Because back in the 1970s and 80s, if you were a climber of note, if you were one of the best climbers in the world, you came to the Gunks because we had some of the hardest routes in the world. So, and meeting these people just had me like I've got to go check it out. So that became just this amazing life of doing this stuff and traveling around to different places around the world to check it out.
So do you, even though that was his take on it, do you think there's some merit to what he was saying?
I do, Anthony. I do think there is merit to it, because obviously I'm not chasing the hardest grades in the world anymore. That's just not going to happen. I still do love exploring new places and going to places where I haven't done routes, and routes that I can do quickly and are not repetitive. But so often it is about going to places where I'm going to meet up with friends, or find new friends, meet people from different cultures. And at this point, most of the time I travel with Amy, my significant other, and so she and I will often take the trips, especially overseas. We'll take those trips together. So we've kind of got the built-in belayer partner who knows me better than anybody.
That's nice. Yeah, I feel like, I try to, again, inspire people to be active for a lifetime. So there is a point when you're not in your peak anymore. A lot of people get into activity in the beginning, and it's this whole high performance thing, and you're trying to compete with everyone else to be the best. When, my bread and butter when I was growing up was martial arts, and I've gravitated into climbing and other things too. But martial arts, even I felt it myself. It's like you can't just compete. You got to, or you can't just do the activity. You got to try and compare yourself to everyone else and see. And now I'm at a point, I started a new, once a month we do an activity called, rough and tumble play. So what I do is I just invite people, and we come and we kind of play on the mat type of thing. And because I still love the sport and I want to do it forever. I'm not competing like I used to, but I don't want to lose it, and I still want to have that opportunity to play. And I feel like, I guess there's still a little bit of that in any sport. You don't have to dabble in it for the competitive aspect, because there's all these other benefits that you're going to be getting from just recreational.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the easiest thing when you think about a lifelong activity that most people can do, and you think about people who get passionately into running. And you can run there's so many different aspects to running. It can be a serious 100-meter track athlete. It could be somebody who does marathons. It could be doing hateful 100 races, whatever. So there's so many venues. But I have friends who have been lifelong runners and watched them transition in different ways. But in the end, all they really care about is they're going running, right? So and you don't need a partner. You can just go off and do it. You're on your own all the time. So I think it's one reason why that stays so popular. And from a game perspective, I mean, think of how many lifelong golfers, and they're, when you get to be older in golf, you're going to suck. But at least you have a handicap system so you can actually play and compete with even good golfers.
Yeah. And I think you might be able to relate to this too, based on the little bit of knowledge I've learned about you thus far. I feel like golf and running would just never be enough for me. I need something that has the
You get punched in the face and
whatever, like, martial arts or climbing.
No, you do jiu-jitsu?
Karate and jiu-jitsu, yeah.
We can always grapple.
Yeah, grapple. But just the idea of something more dynamic, and climbing does it for me. So, there's going to be some people that tune in, and those are the things that they might gravitate towards. And the people that tune into this episode might be people who are a bit more dynamic, that do kind of like that thrill a little, or excitement. And even that, I think it's, you can still do it in a safe way as you age. I'm sure the types of climbs you did years ago and your safety precautions today probably have changed.
Oh, isn't that an irony of life when you're young and you really have so much to live for? You don't give a shit about losing it. You take these
Which
risks.
is crazy.
And you get older, when you have little time left, is when you start to think it's so precious.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely true. I have zero desire to scare myself anymore. I have no desire to do scary routes any longer.
Right.
But that's also a matter of perspective too. I mean, some things I do would be considered scary, but by others, and other things I do would be considered quite pedestrian by those of greater skill. So but they're absolutely right about that. I think your perspective changes on it, and I'll still go off and I'll solo some easy routes in the Gunks, and stuff that's well within my comfort range. But I'll still get scolded. Amy hates it when I do that, because she's like, what happens? What happens if you inevitably, fall, or a bird comes out, or you get stung by a wasp nest or whatever? And there's truth to that, but it's the risks that you see are, I mean, you get in a car, you're taking a risk every time, and a lot of those risks are outside of your control. And I think when you're soloing climbing, you mitigate those risks at best. And I think, somebody like Alex is really a great example. He didn't just go walk up to El Cap one day and decide he's going to solo it. That was years and years and years of practice. And that guy's brain is interesting. It's not that he doesn't have fear. He just has an innate ability to control it. And he also is really detail oriented. Like, I guarantee you, he knew every single foothold and every single handhold on that 3,000 feet of rock. So it seems crazy that he did something like that, but it's not at all crazy when you're inside the head and mentality he had for it. Could something have gone wrong? Sure, there's a big risk there. But, it's not fair to really equate it to going to the grocery store in a car, but at the same time, the focus on attention to detail was really there. So, that's, I'm sure I kind of went off on a tangent
No, this is good. It's funny because we're naturally bouncing to all the different things I wanted to talk about, but it's all good no matter how we get there, as long as I get it. But that leads me to another thing I used to say, or one of my philosophies of life, wear out versus rust out. I think that I think it's important. I had one gentleman on the episode from the Strength and Conditioning Association, NSCA, but he says he tells a story to his students all the time where he compares two different lifestyles. There's an older lady who breaks her hip, and back in whatever it was, the 60s or something, they wouldn't fix a broken hip because they thought you wouldn't live much longer anyway. But she ended up defying the odds and living much later. Versus another gentleman who was riding his bicycle and had a massive heart attack on the bicycle. But one died doing what he loved, while the other probably spent the last 20 years of her life just wishing she could have done maybe a lot of things she couldn't. And while it sounds a little morbid, I used to say, may we all die doing what we love. And hopefully not sooner, much later. But if you were able to make it that far that you died on the wall, and knock on wood, God forbid, or myself, that I died climbing or something like that, how beautiful was it that I could spend my whole life still doing what I love? That means all the way until the last day I was still able to do what I loved. And,
well, I think there's a distinction there between in a high-risk sport like climbing, and especially if you talk about alpine climbing or high mountain climbing like the Himalaya, there's a lot of danger involved with that that's subjective, which is outside of your control. And that's why there's a high mortality rate there as well. And I've heard, I can't even, over my years, how many times I've heard, well, they died doing what they loved. Well, that might be true, but at the same time, if you left behind kids and a spouse and debt, I think there's a difference that has to be at least acknowledged, that doing what you love also means doing what you love with some responsibility. And I suppose that's an older person talking about it as opposed to a younger person, because most of the folks I know who died doing that were younger, from 20s and 30s and even maybe early 40s. But I mean, I personally know good friends who have died like that and left behind a fairly tragic situation. So yeah, they died doing what they loved, but they certainly didn't plan on dying, and nor did the family that they left behind. So I do think it's almost better if you can take those risks to not have strings attached, and then in that way maybe leave grieving parents. But that's I think it's a big difference from leaving grieving infants.
Right. Yeah, I guess, and that leads me. I used to, another big one was calculated risks. So, which I think is different. Yeah, because there's always going to be the seesaw and the extreme ends where you were just careless and maybe could have, like you said, though, there are things outside of your control and you have to weigh that in. And at what point are you now taking on this high risk situation with things out of your control? And yeah, I think there's a lot to weigh there. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. So then, do you think it's worth it for people to still take a risk? Is it better for it to be a more calculated risk? Like you said, you still go out, but you're very safe when you do it, or you try the best you can. Or is it better for them to not maybe dabble in some of those? Or what are your thoughts on that now?
Well, I don't think it's my place or my job to be the judge and jury on that at all. But I do acknowledge the fact that I've seen it work out not great for those left behind. Does that mean, am I advocating that they don't take risk and not do it? No, not necessarily. It's just, I just think you got to be conscious about it. I mean, if I went out soloing in the Gunks and I died tomorrow, well, my daughter is 26. Amy could take care of herself. I have a life insurance policy. It's like I wouldn't be leaving people in a bad situation aside from possibly being sad I'm dead.
Right.
So I mean, that's a judgment on my. I mean, I'm not here to make anybody else's judgment call on that.
But for yourself, you still climb.
Oh yeah.
You just ensure you are taking these calculated risks beforehand.
Yeah, and also like most of the climbing I do, if I'm doing anything that's difficult, it's mostly sport climbing these days. So I'm going to trust the bolts to catch me. I'm not doing any sketchy, scary trad climbing that's RRX at all. And like I said, on the occasions I solo, I'm soloing so far below my ability that I often joke, if somebody finds me dead at the base of one of these climbs, please drag me to something harder. So it looks like I was trying to...
That's funny. Yeah. So I guess what's your final take on risk in your own life? So based on your younger years, I'm sure you were taking higher risks. Now that risk has minimized and it's more calculated and you ensure that the areas of your life are doing the best within your interest. But do you think overall that for you, some of that risk is worth it and maybe something you need to be fulfilled and feel, enjoy life?
I don't know that I really, I don't feel when I go climbing that I'm really risking anything. And if I am risking something, it's definitely very, very cognitively, I think about it. It's like,
right.
But for an example, back in 2017, we took a trip down to Madagascar, and there's these big, long 2,000-foot granite walls that they're bolted, but they're sparsely bolted. It's like you might go 50 meters and have 3 bolts on a route. So you're definitely in danger of taking long falls, but the bolts are all well placed, and they're near the hardest parts of the pitches. So you kind of like it's heads up, right? So my mentality was like that, but I'll tell you, what, the 2 worst accidents I've ever had in my life had nothing to do with climbing. One was going for a hike in the Catskills and taking a massive screamer after my foot slipped on some ice and going off a bunch of cliffs.
Oof.
And then that shattered my ulna.
Oh, yeah.
And as well as putting a big dent in my head. And then just recently, 2 weeks ago, taking a bike on the carriage road, crashing that, and now being concussed.
Right.
And was I thinking about risk on either of those things? No. In my brain, there was no risk. But had I been thinking about these things as being risky, the way I would in climbing, about assessing what's coming up, maybe it would have been a different outcome.
Interesting.
So sometimes it's not thinking about risk that's going to screw you.
Yeah. That also makes me think too about, there's a piece about confidence in my mind where one person who maybe intuitively they feel like they're a little scared or nervous to do something, but they feel the pressure and they do it anyway. Versus somebody who's actually genuinely feels very confident to do this thing. And it's almost like real confidence and false confidence. And not like as if one person's better or not. It's just like you said, to Alex Honnold, he repeated this about 1,000,000 times. He actually did the work to repeat that in his brain. And now his confidence is a real confidence, so much that he feels like he can free solo that thing, that I've done it that many times. But yeah, do you think that there's sometimes false confidence, and maybe that plays a role where people feel pressured, or this social pressure to try to look good? Maybe they're getting it on Instagram or whatever it is or something, and they should probably listen to their intuition on that a bit more of, feeling confident and going versus false confidence.
Or there'd be like the YouTube clip of, "Hey, y'all, watch this."
Exactly. Right.
Well, if it's really putting yourself in jeopardy and you feel you're doing it for some secondary reason besides the sheer pleasure of doing it, then you probably are going to end up in a situation where you're going to get hurt or killed. And I think it's if you're doing it for a photo shoot, if you're doing it for a challenge of somebody's daring you or any of that kind of stuff, then you're probably not going to be in the right mental state to do it. I mean, it's and I think that that's really one of the big things for anything. I wouldn't even call it risk. If you think about being in the right mental state to perform, then you're talking about a certain place your brain goes where you're ready. and it's not, and only you know it. It's like you're ready because you've done whatever you had to do to prepare for that thing. You're ready for it. So that mental state is a special place. That thing we talk about being in the zone or however you want to look at it. It's like when you are just like, it's just all flowing. It's just happening. It's working out well. So that comes from within. It does not come from outside. That comes within you. And how you get to that point is a whole bunch of work. It could be making sure you've done all your homework, you've done everything you want to, you've done all the due diligence to get yourself to that mental state. And still, the mental state can be quite ephemeral. It can be there for a moment and gone. If it's gone, then suddenly you're not in the same spot and you're not going to perform as well.
Right.
I think that's why it's so special. I mean, I think about the times we get when we're in that spot where everything is just effortless. And those are special moments.
Very special. Yeah, I had a Olympic martial artist on the podcast, and she said, maybe there was she could count on her hand, she said, those times where everything aligned perfectly. Because the fact that there's so many other things that are out of your control, and you're kind of at the mercy of the universe a bit, that maybe, I don't know, whether it's the lighting, this, that, I don't know, something else that was contributing to, there is all the things that are within your control, but there's still a little window of things that will always be out of your control. So you control everything you can, and then those other things have to align too. But then there's these small little moments, she said, that she could count on her hand where everything aligned, and I think I performed as perfectly as that perfect moment.
I would agree 100%. I don't think if that state was continuously around in our lives, it would be called nirvana. You would be in heaven.
Right.
But I think it's what makes them special is because she's absolutely right. I mean, it's not just about it's like when everything else is going well, and it just happens. And sometimes it's one of the funny things, and it's very, very common in climbing, where we'll have a project and we'll be working on this project. We'll go back to a climb to try and do it from the top to bottom without falling. It might take days, or it might take weeks, or it might take months, and people will work on these projects. And so often, and I've had it happen myself, when you actually do it, it's like, that was effortless. Why did it take me so long to do that? But it's just like you've done it enough times, you've tried it enough times, and then when it finally clicks, and oftentimes, frequently, it could be like, oh, shit, it's another failed day, I didn't get to do it well. I'll just go for one more burn on the thing just for a fitness slap. And then you do it.
Yeah.
Because now you're out of your brain. Your conscious mind has been shut up. You don't care anymore. And the subconscious just knows what to do and does it. Those are super, super special times.
Yeah. What's interesting too with things I've been projecting is then once I pass it once, now all of a sudden I'm, meanwhile, it was taking me forever to get past that spot. And now yet I'm flying past it and getting stuck on this other spot. That once you finally...
There'll always be a ceiling.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But just the idea of that now, how my body now knows it, and can do it, where it was hard once, and yet now it's not even hard at all, and I'm flying past that spot. But that's that effort of the practice and things like that you mentioned before too.
It'll get hard again. Don't worry. Just just get older
with age, right? Yeah. I mean, look, I have a lot of like I said, martial arts is my bread and butter. There's a lot of older gentlemen in the martial arts, and I get to change with them downstairs afterwards, and we always talk and stuff like that. Oh, this hurts, that hurts, or whatever it is.
I'll bet.
Yeah. So but again, that's my philosophy of that wear out versus rust out, where I think there's gonna be, of course, do you think you're really gonna make it to a certain and be just pain free? Of course, you're gonna have pain, and your performance is not gonna be anywhere as high. I see even myself for the first time ever. I was always pretty fast, and we do a little beach picnic day with our martial arts school, and we do sprint racing. And my brother, who's 17, we have a big age gap, but for the first time he tied me. He might have beat me. There's some debate out there, but I'm starting to see my...
Oh yeah, don't worry, he'll be beating you soon.
Yeah, which I'd be happy to see. But it's inevitable. And I heard you say somewhere that idea of coming to peace with that a bit. If you're trying to hold on to the ego and fight it too much, that's the beauty of like yin and yang in life. Like this,
Yeah.
this is an opportunity to practice the, you know.
Yeah. Well, look at it. I have some friends in climbing who were the best in the world, and when they could no longer be the best in the world, they moved on because
And they stopped climbing.
They stopped climbing.
Wow.
Because what it was for them was basically being the best, and when they couldn't do that any longer, their interest just died out, and it wasn't. It's again, it's what are you in it for? And there's nothing wrong with that. For me, I kind of find it. I don't know. It's interesting to me because I couldn't imagine not climbing. It's just like the act of it so much for me is. I don't know. It's like almost like brushing my teeth. It's a lot more interesting.
Right.
It's
right.
just something I do on a, and to your point of like either don't rust out. It's it keeps me reasonably fit for other things in life. So it's nice to have that. I like I have a climbing gym in my basement. I like going down there and moving around the basement
In here.
yeah.
Oh wow, cool.
And that's I use that fairly often. So I think it's the difference between being a climber versus using climbing. That sounds a little bit cold for those folks, but
Right.
it's the friends. I have a lot of friends as well who were never exceptional at climbing, but they just love it. And to me, those are also their lifers. They just love the activity. And I'm even loath to call it a sport because climbing is so not. It can be a sport. Obviously, it's in the Olympics now. There's sport climbing and there's competitions, but it's just an amazing activity. It's almost like calling surfing a sport. It's not really a sport. It's a thing. It's a meditative thing that people do. So yeah, it runs the gamut. The other thing I think is very cool. It's a little bit off topic, but I'm just very recently Brooke Rapatou, the daughter of Didier Rapatou and Robin Erbsfield, both exceptional competition climbers in their day. She just climbed a route that's just one letter grade off the hardest route in the world. So the hardest route in the world is 515D. She's the first female to climb a 515C.
Wow.
And what I think is outstanding about climbing is it's not strictly about size, muscle structure, bulk, anything else. Like you'll never likely have a woman run the 100-meter as fast as a man can, just because the pure structure of muscularity is in favor of the man. And a lot of sports are like that. But climbing has no such real advantage. Being tall isn't necessarily an advantage. It can be, but it might also be a hindrance. Being small can be an advantage or a hindrance. The size of holds, if you have smaller fingers, they feel bigger. There's a lot of things that equal it out. And in my opinion, the woman who's like the best competition climber in the world right now, Janja Gonbrek, she's a Slovenian. She basically wins everything she goes into. She's got 2 gold medals from the Olympics, and she's amazing. And I was arguing with an old, very good climber from the 1980s, a French friend, about how if Janja was in a competition with the men, I'll bet you she would podium. And he's like, no, c'est impossible, no. And I reminded the same person said, no woman will ever climb a 514A. And then about 2 months later, Lynn Hill climbed a 514A. So I said, you remember this?
Right, yeah.
So I think that's really cool about climbing, for sure.
Yeah, when I go to the climbing gym, there's at least, it's half and half. I wouldn't say at all it's like a male-dominated sport. And actually, I can't say for the sport. For where I climb, in the gym I climb in, it is not male-dominated. There's a lot of females, and they're climbing. I'm watching women totally blow me out of the water at climbs. Oh, yeah. All the time. And I'm like, damn, you'd look at someone and think like, underestimate a bit. And, I'm like, this girl's just blowing it out of the water. And so it's cool to see that for sure.
I think it's really cool. It's like, that's one of the big differences you'll see at the Gunks as well, for sure. It's like, when I started climbing, it was heavily male dominated.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I'd say it's close to 50-50. And now not unusual to see a pair of women going out to climb together, which, again, was not happening back in the 1970s or even the early 80s.
Which is a nice cultural shift because, at least in the movement world, we want that. We want everyone to move because, we know that there's health benefits that come from it. Mind, body, spirit, everything. So why should only one gender, receive those benefits? When you're thinking about it's better. And it's nice to see that culture shifting where, and rock climbing is a very inclusive sport, I think, in general. That and ultimate frisbee, I think, are the two big ones. I play some ultimate too. But yeah. And the other interesting thing that you said, the lifer. And when I saw your book and I saw that title, in karate, the style of karate that I do is called, it's Japanese in origin, but there's karate and karate do. So the word karate is just like, the kicking, punching, or it means the empty hand, literally translated. But karate do means the way, like a way of life. Judo, right? So this idea of, no, it's not something. In fact, they didn't even want people to compete with it when it was originally like being formalized a bit more. They said, oh, once you start going to the competition, you'll lose the essence of what it means to have like the way of life. And I thought it was really cool to see your book titled The Lifer and the Way of Life. It kind of like made me think of this idea of like a lifelong pursuit and a love and a passion for the activity, which was pretty cool.
It's interesting you mentioned that in terms like we were just talking before about how I don't like to call it a sport. Yeah, even though it has a sports side of it for sure, it is more of just it's just, for me, it isn't even a lifestyle. It's just like life. It is what, it's a part of every day I wake up and I think about it. If I don't go do it, I'm thinking about it. I'm reading about it. Or I'm talking to friends who are doing it. It's really a culture at this point.
It's really cool that you have like your own little gym downstairs, because that's, I tell people all the time, in order to maintain your fitness with something, you got to do it regularly. And so what better way than walk downstairs and get a little in?
Yeah, I want to be sure. Don't think I go down there jumping for joy every time. Sometimes it's such a drudgery. It's like,
right.
I got to go down there for 45 minutes and suffer.
Right.
It's not like going to the climbing gym and doing some routes with your friends, which is basically kind of recreational. Go down there and I'm going to beat myself up. It's not really that much fun.
Do you exercise pretty often? So you go down there pretty often?
Yeah, when I'm home, usually when I'm home, I'll climb 4 times a week. And that'll be, usually 2 times will be downstairs in the basement. The other 2 might probably be at a climbing gym or maybe a day outdoors. But, like I was saying before, for having climbed here in the Gunks for, getting close to 50 years, it doesn't hold the same appeal. And that's partially because I'm not that psyched about going and doing routes again and again and again and again. And pretty much I've done most of the routes here I'm ever going to do, at least as far as the difficulty goes. So, and it's also reality-wise, it's just not that much fun to go to climbs that used to be warm-ups and now you fall on them. It's like, it's like, oh, that's not that interesting. It's not that much fun.
Right.
So,
right.
It's, but I suppose that's ego to a degree, but at the same time, just not that interesting. And I don't get the same kind of, if I go someplace new and I'm going to try and do the route my first try to flash it, I get a certain I'm getting psyched. I'm getting the mind is getting ready, the body's getting ready, and it's hard for me to go to a climb I've done a bunch and going, well, I'll just go ahead and tie in and give it a run, and then you're like, oh, I fell, whatever.
Right.
I don't care.
Right.
I don't care as much.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, another point I was going to ask too. What motivates you nowadays? And that kind of answers it. I guess maybe the idea of a new climb is more exciting than your own backyard.
Much more so. That's why we do so much travel.
Yeah.
Because there's literally, if I go to a new crag and there'll be a bunch of routes in the 510 to 512 range I've not done, it's like, oh, great. I'm a kid in the candy store. There's a bunch of routes I can try and do my first try. And it's always the most pleasurable thing for me. And as part of the era I grew up in, where the highest regard was held for doing a climb on your first try without knowing what was coming.
Yeah.
All you know is the grade.
Right. Which they call the first ascent.
No, they call it, it could be a first ascent on a route that's never been done, but even if you knew the routes, like, okay, I know this climb is rated 511C, I've never done it before.
Oh, I
and
see,
you just go do it your first try, you flash it.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Is there a specific name for that?
Flashing.
Just flashing.
Or
right?
on site.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have one friend who, would say like, I want to move somewhere where I'm right next to, like, the climbing outdoors, which no knock to that. But I would always kind of think in my mind, at some point you're going to get bored of that place, whatever it is. Like, I can only imagine how many times you're going to go to that one place, if they have 3 climbs, 4 climbs, you're going to do the same 4 climbs for the rest of your life. Like, at some point you're going to have to travel to get to the other cool ones you want to go to. Unless you're just using it to preserve your fitness, or then it becomes more like a workout. Then, for that matter, the climbing gym is great because they're always changing the route. So
Right.
it has that motivational piece to it.
Right.
But we're meant, like, we have a hunter-gatherer mindset, not to go off track with like evolutionary stuff. But the idea of like, we're meant to constantly move and explore and find new things. But in a world where we're not really able to be hunter-gatherers, I mean, some people can probably jump in a van and just live around the world. It's kind of like the closest to it. But you got to pick a place at some point to live. And, no matter where you pick, you're going to eventually kind of get bored of that, whether it's skiing, snowboarding, whatever, and you're going to still have to travel again,
Well, I think that's true. But that also is good because it keeps you motivated. I mean, even... that we often, I talk about like, oh, where else would we live? And every time we think about it, like, oh, we could move to Kentucky and be in the red, which she doesn't, it's too far away from any kind of city for her. But it's every time we end up back here. And even though climbing doesn't hold the same allure here as it used to for me, it doesn't mean the place doesn't. Because, we're talking about, this is an amazing natural area. Between the preserve, Mohawk Preserve's 8,300 acres or so, Minnewaska State Park's over 30,000 acres, and you have the Mohawk Mountain House, another 1,400 acres, whatever they have. I mean, you have 40,000 plus acres of ridge, and it's there's on a daily basis I'm on the land. I'm going for a bike ride. I'm going for a hike. It's just a beautiful area.
And there's so many different like when you talk about quantity, I feel like you can almost go to a new hike.
Yeah, you can. Even though I do tend to go on the same walk,
right,
pretty frequently.
Right.
But it's
But there's a lot.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's like when you think, it's hard to find many places that are quite like this. There's, we have tons of friends who live out west as well. And, my company is based out in Utah. Black Diamond's out there, and we have tons of friends in Salt Lake City and around there, Boulder and the western slope of Colorado. And every time I look around, it's like, well, this place keeps on winning. And I don't know if it would win if we didn't travel as much as we do, but I don't know any place would actually win if we didn't travel as much as we do. It's, but it really, one thing about moving out west too, my joke is, well, I do want to live in a place where I turn the water tap on, water comes out. So that'll never be a problem for us here.
Right. Do you think that the Gunks is still a world-class climbing destination?
That's a really good question. It certainly was when I started climbing here in the late 70s and right through the middle of the 1980s, middle to even late 80s. But the advent of sport climbing, this is a traditional climbing area, which basically means we insert our own protection in the cracks as we climb up to protect ourselves, and it's removed. As opposed to sport climbing where bolts are inserted into the rock to allow you to not have to carry all this gear with you. And it's generally safer because you always have gear within about 10 feet of you. The advent of sport climbing took the Gunks, I think, pretty much off the map because that became the quest for difficulty, pure difficulty. When I started climbing, it wasn't just how hard the moves were, also how bold was it. If it was scary, like doing hard moves when you're going to hit the ground versus doing hard moves where the risk is a 5-foot fall is a big difference, right? So, but the definition of difficulty really shifted to just the pure gymnastic difficulty of the climbing moves, and sport climbing took off because that was really what people wanted to do, was increase that. And the preserve, this is a preserve, and there was in the middle late 80s, some people wanted to do some sport climbing here. Some of the diehard traditionalists were very much against that happening. So this war started where some people would put in a bolt, then somebody would chop the bolt off. And after that happened for about a year, the preserve said, that's that. This is a nature preserve. It's not a place for petulant adolescents to be fighting about their toys.
Right.
So it really kept it as a traditional climbing area, which also meant that it did not, the level of difficulty didn't continue to rise at the same pace as so many other places. Plus, the style of climbing is, generally speaking, it's more dangerous than clipping bolts at a sport crag. It takes more skill, for sure.
So there's no sport in the Gunks?
There's very, very, very little. There's almost no sport in the Gunks, yeah.
Wow.
And what did take off here was bouldering. There's thousands of boulder problems now, which are pretty high up in the level of difficulty due to a few people. And in the traditional climbing world, well, you saw the movie with Will Moss out at LSC. So now I think Will, in doing this one particular climb, has elevated the Gunks once again to a place where, for the few people in the world who want to challenge themselves on a dangerous route at the high end of difficulty, we now have one of the hardest of those in the world. I'd say probably one of the top 5 hardest traditional climbs in the world now, with Will having done best things in life.
Yeah, wow. So there's probably 2 ways to look at it. Obviously, if you're a diehard climber, you're looking at the competitiveness of like the difficulty of the climb. If you're looking at it through a recreational aspect, whether meaning like the view, the access, how would you put it in that realm? Someone who's maybe traveling, good place to visit, like.
Yeah, I think the Gunks might be one of the top 3 or 4 places in the world for learning how to do traditional climbing.
Wow.
And it's because if it's a style of the rock, the kind of rock. It's a quartz conglomerate, and it means it has a lot of horizontal beds, which means that the holes are often like a ladder, right? There's like it's not like trying to put your hands into a vertical crack and figure out how to make them work. It's very natural to climb here on holes that are just how you naturally grip things. And that style of climbing is unusual. It's very unusual to have traditional climbing areas have very high quality routes at the very beginner level. And in the Gunks, we have amazingly high quality routes at the very beginner level. So it's a great place to learn how to climb in that level, that way. And some places are super easy for being relatively safe about it. For example, at the Peterskill, which is part of Minnewaska State Park, a lot of the guides will go there with beginners because they can set up top ropes on 60-foot routes that are quite easy to do.
Right.
But if you want to learn how to lead, go to the traps, the near traps. There's a lot of really good, easy routes that allow people to learn how to do that stuff safely.
So if I said a world-class destination, there's some debate, but...
Oh, I'd say it's a world-class destination, but not one if your pursuit of ultimate in difficulty.
Right.
Yeah, but as far as the climbs, there's great climbs.
Yeah, because I would often say, and we talked about it a little bit before, but in regard to access to a major city, and then also a world-class outdoor destination, I mean, I feel like you can't beat it. Like I'm sure there's other places in the world, but like it's really a great place. And, a lot of the people I motivate are from New York City. So reminding them that this is a world-class, destination for you to have access to the great outdoors. And for myself, I do like hiking too, but sometimes I want a little extra, maybe the climbing outdoor. I want to interact with the nature.
Sure.
I want to snowboard, I want to kayak, I want to climb. And so I take the seasonal approach. In the winter, I'll snowboard, and summer, I'll do more kayaking, and spring and fall, I'll do more climbing. But it's a great way for me to interact with nature right next to home in my own backyard. You could pop right up. And, I don't know if people realize how valuable that is or how hard that is to get, where you live next to a big city and can still get to something that's this... some people, you hear it too all the time in the climbing gym. Oh, you've been to the Gunks, Some people might not realize like the level of which, the beauty that we have right here in our backyard.
Yeah, two of the most popular hikes we have here, and you'll have people coming up to do them, is they'll hike up to Sky Top and then go up the crevice, which is kind of a ladder system through the cliff. And they'll start down at Duck Pond, they'll hike up there and do that. And the other is at Spring Farm going to Montague's Scramble. It's a scramble through talus, which is like not completely straightforward. It's like not just hiking on a trail, but you got to use your hands a little bit here and there.
Right.
People love that stuff.
Right.
It's not technical, but it's more than just walking.
Right, exactly. And any other little gems close to New York City, you think, that are...
I don't know if it's legal or not, but there's that stuff along the power lines.
I was going to say, yeah, I know the power lines. I've done bouldering there, but I've never done any ropes there.
Yeah, there's a clip. I mean, I don't know the legality of it. We used to climb there with, once in a while, but right down there by the power lines, there's kind of a bus depot where 17 meets and there's that cliff back there behind the bus depot. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure who owns that, but there's some climbing back there and some sport climbing as well. And it's pretty good. It's not extensive, and it starts out pretty hard. I think the easiest things might be like 5'10", but but again, I have no idea the legality of it.
It's right next to my kayak camp, so
Is it?
That's a great day. Kayak.
Have you checked it out?
No, I like I said, I've done the power lines, a little bouldering, but I don't know all the little. I had one little bouldering spot someone took me, and I couldn't even remember how to get to it. If I'm sure I can map it out, ask them, look around, explore more. I haven't done enough exploring there in regard to climbing.
Just to be clear, I'm not advocating going here.
Yeah, yeah, and especially if it's illegal,
But if you should. We used to park literally right there by where the buses were and just walk in the woods and go back there.
Right.
No one ever bothered us. But I mean, I'd say I've probably not been there more than 24 times in my life.
And that was trad climbing you were doing back
Well,
there?
there was trad climbing, but then it turned into a bit of a sport crag.
Oh, so they have bolts in the wall.
Yep.
Ah, okay. Are there any big, just out of curiosity, me being a city kid, this stood out to me a bit, but, I grew up in the city. I wasn't in the outdoors, and it was something I did more as I got older. But there is the etiquette piece. Are there any big etiquette things that stand out to you? Like leave no trace, or I don't know, something that maybe a city kid should know?
I say it all the time. You should either have a mentor who's really well versed in what they're doing. They've been climbing for a long time. They're not just full of crap about what they know how to do. Or spend the money to hire a guide for a time or two and learn how to build anchors, learn how the gear goes, and then start off slowly. And then you'll live through it. But
any good resources in the local area? Do you guide people? Are there any big businesses they can reach out to, you think?
I don't guide myself any longer, but there's 4 different guide services and a couple of individual guides, and anybody who's interested in that can reach out to the local shop, Rock and Snow. They'll have the whole list and all the contact information for those folks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we start to wrap up, any big lessons that you think you've taken away from, that you learned from climbing, but maybe you've applied to other areas of your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't. In some ways, I just feel like I got really lucky in discovering climbing, and it wasn't just a complete accident. I mean, I grew up, in Mamaroneck, so suburb of New York. Grew up playing golf, swimming. And I enjoyed those things. Matter of fact, I think in many ways golf was a great prep for climbing in some ways because it's a total mental game.
Yeah,
well, you think about it. The only difference is it's not physical,
right?
But it's really mental. It's really mental. So you have to keep on working to be in that space to perform.
Right.
But I just didn't like all the trappings that went around country club bullshit. Like it was so status oriented, and I don't know why. I just never found that stuff to be very important. And I was drawn to the outdoors. I used to go camping in local woods, and I read everything I could possibly read about hiking and mountaineering. I used to read every mountaineering book in my library. I'd read, and it just seemed so cool. But there was no way in the early '70s. I mean, climbing gyms, of course, didn't exist. Nobody in Mamaroneck, Scarsdale, climbing. I was like, what the fuck is that? Nobody did that stuff. So it wasn't until I got to college in Vermont that I had the opportunity. But as soon as I went, the first weekend
this is it.
It was like when I was like, yep, this is everything it's almost like I was looking for it. I was just waiting for it to happen, and it really did. It just drove my life in a way that, and so much serendipity happened along that way. How I got involved with eventually going to work for Chouinard Equipment and the creation of Black Diamond, and basically making a career for over 30 years of being inside an industry that was great. Also, that basically paid me to go rock climbing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So what lessons from that? The lesson, and I say this all the time, if you're lucky enough to find a passion and you're able to turn that passion into something that becomes your life, then you won the lottery. There doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, that's so true. I can relate, and wise words. Before we close out, any big things that we didn't hit that maybe you wanted to share? Not that you have to. I just always open the floor in case I missed something and didn't, maybe you had it in the back of your head and wanted to share.
No, I can't. I think we covered a lot of bases right there.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. No, we hit it all. I really appreciate your time. Now I'm like dying to jump out there and go climb.
That's right there. You're 3 minutes from the cliffs.
I know. I mean, I'm going to have to I still got some time, so I might have to do a little bit of a climb or something before I go. But I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, your wisdom. Everyone should check out your book, right? The Lifer.
Yeah, for rock climbing adventures in the Gunks and beyond, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's probably the best way to stay in contact with you. From my understanding, you kind of prefer to not communicate with the masses. I think I heard somewhere of like
what I don't like
Instagram.
Well, I do have actually Amy, my significant other. She is my Instagram.
Oh,
manager.
Perfect.
So she'll tell me once in a while. I mean, if you Instagram me, I may not hear about it for a month because she. But I'm not a huge fan of social media because I just think it's oxymoronic. It's not very social and it's not exactly media. So
yeah, that's a very valid point.
And I mean, I do think it absolutely has plenty of pluses for keeping in touch with folks, but I also think it can bring out the worst in people as well, and it's too much time. Fuck the screen, get outside.
Oh, I love. Actually, that's the perfect ending. That's the last piece of advice right there. Fuck the screen and get outside.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you for today.
Sure, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.